Hey David, I want to talk to you today about healing shame and your ideas about that. Um, First, can you just name the three? I know you have three components of that, and then I want to hear about how those came about.
Right. The three components are seeing. I used to call that respecting. And I like the word respect because the word respect has two elements. Spect, like spectator, spectacle, is to see, and re is to see again. I now call it seeing, but there's a sense of seeing and looking again. And then there's feeling, so that a person not just sees you, but has a feeling response. And then the third thing is believing. I used to call that radical belief because it's a deep kind of belief in people, which I can talk about in a moment.
Yeah. How did you come up with those?
Yeah. It's interesting. I used to teach this class at the University of Phoenix, and I can't remember which psychology class it was. I think it was clinical interviewing. And I had an interesting question I was thinking about back then. This is probably 15 years ago. And the question was, what is it like to be loved? Because I was thinking about shame, and I was thinking about love. And I thought, what is it like to be loved? What does it mean to be loved? I know we each have our personal experiences that are important and unique. So there's a million definitions that are right for each person. But I thought, is there some kind of objective?
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there an objective definition of love? Objective about love? How could you be objective about love? It's not an objective thing.
Sure.
But I had a scientist in me, so I asked people, what's it like to be loved? And people had a very hard time answering that question.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's interesting. And I thought about that, and I thought, I know, I'm going to ask people what it's like to not be loved.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And they had an easy time answering that question. They'd say, you know what, I was invisible in my home. Or everyone distrusts me, no one believed me. Or no one, I would tell people sad stories, I'd tell them about my pain, and no one had a reaction like I was meaningful.
Wow, yeah.
So I collected lots of those stories.
That's so cool.
Isn't it cool?
It's really cool.
My scientific brain was like, I want to think of that.
Categorize them.
I want to categorize them, right? It's artificial, but it can be useful.
Yeah.
If it's useful, it's great.
Right.
If it's not, I think then throw away the science. But if it's useful, that's a wonderful thing. So people told me, and I just implied them three things. They said, I felt unseen, meaning feeling seen was a sense of love, being loved. And I then later on went on to hear more stories to define that further, and people said people had a feeling response. People cried when they told them stories. People got angry when they were hurt. People were joyed when they had something good to say. And then people had the sense of people believed me, believed in me, didn't think there was something wrong with me. They thought if I came home from school and I was upset, it was because something really happened.
Yeah.
So, and they imbued in me a sense of, I trust myself, I believe in myself.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about each one a little bit more if we could. First, tell me about seeing, respect, maybe a story or something about that.
When people tell you something about themselves, how do you see inside of them? People tell you something, it's subjective. You say, I'm nervous today. I can't see that. How do I let you know I'm seeing that? How do I see that? So what technique is useful is to focus on somatic experience. So I would say to you, where is that nervousness that you feel today? And you might say, it's here in my solar plexus. And I might say, feel that for a moment. Then you would take a moment and I'd say, can you show me with your hand? And you might say, it's like this. See, there's like a little flutteriness. Then I might say, if you kept fluttering, what would you do? They'd say, I might fly away. Well, that's a really touching moment. I mean, it actually brings so much moisture into my eyes. That person saying, I want to fly away, and I can see it. And when I'm seeing it in that way, that person has an experience of feeling seen even more than when I say, oh, you're nervous today. And that seeing gives them a sense of being loved. It combats the sense of shame.
Would you literally have to see them make a motion to think that you have seen it, or can it show up in other ways that aren't literally in the visual realm?
Yeah, it can. I could say, I could say, tell me a little story about your nervousness, and they could tell me a little story. I was at school today, I had an exam, or I was going to go visit my family, and that's not so easy. And I might hear a little bit in their voice. I'm exaggerating that. And I might say, I hear a little flutter in your voice. That must be some of the nervousness you're talking about. That person will still have the experience of being seen, but it helps for it to be what we call sensory grounded. So some experience, not just an idea. Nervousness is an idea, but the flutter in their voice, the hand motion, those things are experiences that I can actually bear witness to.
Almost like you're seeing a unique subtlety in what they're calling anxious, and you can speak to that. Right,
and people feel like, wow, someone's really paying attention. They really want to know me.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing experience. The person really wants to be known. You really want to know me. You're asking more. Because I always tell people if I'm upset, they just go, no one says, tell me about your upset. What's it like? Where do you feel it? I hear it in your voice.
Right.
Tell me a story. Yeah.
And the second one, feeling. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, feeling is a pretty clear one. It says when you're expressing something, a feeling quality, so you're moved by something. Let's say you were hurt, that's the most obvious thing. If I express some kind of feeling about that, if I'm moved in my feelings, oh my gosh, let me take a moment and hear that story you just told me. Now I'm listening inside of myself to what you just told me about what your parents said to you about how you look that day. And I give myself a moment to feel, ooh, if that were me, I even get a little shudder when I'm imagining that story. Then I witness back what's happening for me. Oh, gives me the shudders, or makes me wince, or I can imagine if that were me, I'd be like, get me out of here. Now, in addition to a seeing quality, you're hearing that, I'm witnessing back that I'm moved by that person. And if you feel like I'm moved by your story, again, you feel loved. It's a combating of the shame, because shame has a dismissal in it. Your feelings aren't important. But when I say, you move me, oh my gosh, David, you have tears in your eyes when you tell that story. My story really does mean something. It really has power to it. It really has information in it. And that communicates to you. And if you've been dismissed a lot, that one moment where I'm moved by you can get in deeper than any words I can say.
Would you say that it's an empathic response, that you're showing genuine empathy? Is that accurate? Or
I think that's perfect. It's an empathic response. There's a kind of a compassion, a co in a compassion. The co, I'm joining you in the passion. Passion has blood in it, in its definition. I'm joining you in the blood. Yeah.
And the third is, remind me, radical belief, right?
Right.
Say more about that.
Yeah.
And I know you have another word for it too. So.
Yeah, I think I sometimes just use the word belief. But
okay.
it is a radical belief.
Yeah.
So that it starts with believing you. Obviously, you say I have a blue shirt. I say I believe you. That's not a big deal. But if you say I got bullied today at school, and I say, what did you do? That's a shaming response. I'm kind of blaming you for something.
Right.
But it also implies that I don't believe you exactly. I'm checking on you. I'm meeting you with a kind of suspicion about your experience.
As if it's objectively measurable, like, well, if you tell me this person said this, I could decide, yes, they bullied you, or no, they didn't.
Right.
But it's not that way.
That's right.
Right.
And when you feel believed, it changes something, because when people are shamed, not only do they experience not being believed from the outside, but they stop believing themselves. I don't know what happened. Maybe that person, you think it's how, do you get upset when teachers tease you in the class? That person's asking that question as if they're disbelieving their experience. They're saying, I get upset, but I don't know if it's okay to be upset. And maybe it's not right to be upset. I don't really believe that I'm upset. Maybe something else happened that day. So people internalize that. Then believing them in a deep way, believing in their experience in a deep way, ends up combating that shame as well, and it brings a sense of love. So those three qualities. believing you deeply, and then feeling you, having an empathy and a compassion, and then really seeing you and wanting to know the details of what's happening to you, that wraps its way around. Remember we talked about shame wraps a bandage around of disbelief and dismissal, and then that wound in your hand gets filled with shame. Now I'm wrapping it in a loving bandage, and you start to believe yourself. You think you're important, your feelings matter, who you are, and you feel seen and understood. That's a deep counter. It's a healing response to shame.
I love it. Makes me happy to hear you talk about it. Want to let people know who are watching that you have some classes coming up on shame in October and November this fall, 2016, and they can go on your website, davidbedrick.com, and see those events and join in the classes if they want to.
Yeah, thanks for the interview. I didn't know I had those things to say today, but I can tell inside it matters a lot to me that people understand that, and if they want to practice at moments with somebody to try to do those things, really makes a better world.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.